If you were to look at the American nation, the American empire, and the trajectories looking into the future, given these measures, what is the trajectory that leads to the collapse of the American empire based on these measures? What are the concerning indicators? And if those break down further, what does that look like?
Well, all of those indicators are concerning, maybe except for one, which is technology, the technology niche, although even in that area, the United States is improving at a slower rate than is China for various advantages that they have there. They put out about 8 times as many computer engineers. They have free data and so on. But if you look at them, so the financial is a concern. The internal disorder is a concern. Then if you look at education levels, the United States is in many ways is losing its educational advantage. If you were to compare it with China, if you take general public education in the United States, it's deteriorated tremendously, even in comparison to developed countries. There are scores, PISA scores, and so on, and it's something like 38th in the world or something, and that was a big plunge. Average public education. If you look at the best universities in the world, the United States is unique in having the best universities in the world. So there are these privileged spots that are excellent, uniquely excellent. So when you look at the comparison, education in China is improving rapidly, and the quantity is a quantity of educated people in the areas that they're moving in is greater, and the resources that they're putting behind it is greater, and so you see the results are greater. But it's sort of along the lines that I'm dealing with. If you were to follow through in terms of actual productions, I think in terms of technologies, there are some areas that the United States is in a lead at the moment. There's some areas that China's in a lead, but China's gaining very quickly. When I first went to China, 1984, I would bring $10 calculators, and I gave them away as gifts to high-ranking people, and they thought they were miracle devices. Right now, in terms of areas like quantum computing and AI and many areas, you have a race going on. And so if you take the trajectory of the competitiveness, not just look at the current level, you have a situation where they're improving at a much faster rate. This is all good for the world if the world can get along. And the main thing, I think, is in how do you have a healthy world, and how do you have a strong economy, and how do you have a strong situation, is be strong. The United States' war is with itself. That's the main war. It's very simple in history. Be financially sound, earn more than you spend, and be strong in these ways, and pretty much everything will take care of itself.
But you make it sound simple, of course, because there's a momentum when things degrade, when the education system degrades, when you start borrowing, when all of these indicators, once they start going down, there's a momentum to it, right? So it's hard to reverse it.
Right, and there are circumstances that you're then in. For example, indebtedness. It's politically desirable for those to borrow money and spend, because their constituencies only look at what they get. And when they get a lot, they don't pay attention to the balance sheet and how much debt is on the books. So it's always better to borrow, spend, and then leave the cleanup to the next guy. Mm-hmm. And so you inherit a lot. You inherited, as a new president enters in, or new legislators, They have a lot of debt. They have a broken down infrastructure. They don't have enough money to fix that. And so that's the lay of the land that the prior generations put you in. And there you are. And so that's right. It's difficult because when you start to think, okay, what's healthy? Well, earn more than you spend. Well, that's not so easy because, what does that mean? Go earn more? I mean, okay, that's not so easy. Spend less? That isn't going to work. So now what do? Okay, you have this debt that you then monetize, and that's why it's classic. So yes, that's why these cycles occur, because what happened before created the lay of the land that is then increasingly difficult to deal with.
So what can great leaders do in this moment? I mean, maybe my sense is leadership is crucial here. So, for example, to do very large projects that invest in the education system, that sort of try to fix the fundamentals, or maybe invest more and more into the innovation and the development of new technologies and so on. It feels like that just doesn't happen organically. So you have to have strong leaders that convince the populace of the importance of these ideas.
Well, I completely agree with your list. What we have is a situation where everybody has their opinions and they have to sort of get them exactly right. And they all fight with each other about whether their opinions. So the most important thing is that we become bipartisan so that we get over our differences. I would have a bipartisan cabinet. I would draw upon both members of both parties, the moderates, who are going to be able to work together. So as then we have one country, and then we deal with those in a means that works for the majority of the people in the middle rather than the polarity. I think our greatest risk is in not being able to do that. So I would say that's of paramount importance because we have the resources, wealth, real wealth, and science and everything has never been better than it is. But the notion is that it has to work for the majority of people, and we have to keep it being productive. So that group has got to calmly and knowledgeably work together so that they increase the size of the pie and they create broad-based prosperity. So that is of paramount importance. Whatever they do, if they do it that way, I can say I'm happy about, because that other alternative is the really scary alternative.